Technically my wife and I are still married. We have been separated for almost a year, but neither of us has filed for divorce yet. Last spring when COVID first got bad, both of my adult children lost their jobs and couldn't make rent. So I offered for them to stay with us until they got back on their feet. This caused a lot of stress for everyone involved. I work 45-50 hours a week in a manufacturing job, while my wife has not worked in nearly a decade. This was completely her choice as she has never liked working, who does, and she wanted to pursue making income on Etsy and other similar sites. So when my son and daughter came to stay with us, our house became much more crowded than usual. Since my wife stays at home all day, she felt that my children were invading her space and wanted them out pretty much immediately. She felt I was enabling them by letting them come stay with us and that we should let them sink or swim on their own. I told her that I couldn't let my children suffer when I was in a position to help. After only a few weeks, crap hit the fan. My wife had blown up at both my son and daughter because she felt they weren't pulling their weight in our house. She started giving them chore lists and would get angry when all of the things weren't done. My kids were both looking for work and dealing with unemployment offices, and doing housework took a backseat to those things, rightfully so in my mind. I came home from work one day to my wife screaming like a banshee at my son. When I walked in, my wife immediately turned her ire to me and told me that if I didn't kick my kids out right away, then she was leaving. So I told her my kids were staying, and she packed her stuff and called her sister to pick her up. Wife also doesn't drive. Since then we have barely spoken. She won't answer my calls and will respond to pretty much every text with, "Unless your kids are gone, we have nothing to talk about." Mind you, my daughter moved out during the winter after finding a new job, and my son has been working part-time for 6 months while looking for full-time work and saving money to move out. My wife didn't even tell me when her dad passed away earlier this year. I had to find out on Facebook. When I tried to call her, she wouldn't answer and ignored all my texts too. Since it has become painfully obvious to me that this relationship is over, I decided to finally file for divorce. However, as soon as my wife was served the papers, she flipped out on me. She is pissed that I cut off her access to our shared checking account and pissed that she will no longer have access to health insurance through my employer. She has called me an idiot more times than I can count, and her siblings have joined the choir on that refrain now too. I do feel bad that this is going to make her life more difficult, but I no longer feel it is my obligation to provide for her when she clearly wants nothing to do with me. So, not weighing on the idiot at the moment, but the first thing that came to mind is whether you consulted a lawyer about whether what you are doing is legal. Because if you've only just filed for divorce, but it isn't settled yet, then presumably the separation of marital assets hasn't been established in court yet. So unilaterally cutting off access to accounts seems like something you should run by a lawyer. Everyone's the idiot here. You need to go through the proper steps for a divorce. Can't just unilaterally decide to take away her access to shared assets. She is an idiot for trying to kick out your kids, though I am wondering if she was the one who was having to do all the extra cooking and cleaning you claim they were too busy to do. You're the idiot. I imagine having your adult children in the house made the environment cluttered and chaotic. I can see why you wanted to put them up, but I can also see your wife's viewpoint. It's her home too, and she didn't feel comfortable in it due to your children being there. So, in essence, your actions made your wife feel unable to enjoy living in the marital home. Regarding the joint account and health insurance, as you're not divorced yet, I think the humane thing to do would be not to cut her off. Background. My entire family is poor and lives paycheck to paycheck. I earned a scholarship to college and then started a career, so I am the only member of our family that is not living in poverty. My husband and I are solidly middle class. For the past decade or so, we have been hosting family get-togethers about once a month, inviting my whole family, 3 siblings and spouses plus my parents, and paying for everything: food, drink, etc. Current situation. My husband was laid off about a year ago and has been unemployed or underemployed ever since. He is currently working at about 50% of his old salary. Things are financially difficult. We are just covering our bills with our combined income, and if anything extra comes up, we have to take it out of savings. One area that we are trying to save money with is hosting these family get-together. We haven't stopped completely. We hosted Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, Mother's Day, and some birthdays, but we have stopped hosting lesser holidays, skipped Super Bowl Sunday and Memorial Day. Today is Independence Day. We normally have a get-together, but we told everyone we would just be spending a quiet holiday alone with our children. Yesterday, my mom called upset that we weren't hosting anything. I told her we were just going to spend the day swimming. We belong to a swim club. Immediately she got excited and wanted to come, along with my youngest sister who lives at home. I eventually agreed, but said it would only be for a few hours. Later in the day, all of my siblings started calling me and asking when they could come over to use the pool and what were we doing for dinner. Now, I have to pay to get them into the swim club and I have no interest in paying for them all to eat and drink all day long. So after talking it over with my husband, we decided to call them all and tell them that we could not host a meal, but if they each wanted to bring a dish to share and anything they wanted to drink, we would host a potluck meal so we could all eat together. Well, they didn't like that well. One said that they don't get paid until Friday and had no food in the house, so it was like us telling them that they couldn't come. One said that it wasn't fair. They want to see the family. Making them bring food takes money they would use to buy groceries and is like taking food out of their family's mouth. We didn't give in. I wasn't planning to host. If they want to come, then they can contribute. But from their perspective, I have money that they don't and it's selfish to ask them to bring anything. So, am I the idiot? Not the idiot. You're well within your rights to refuse to host a bunch of moochers. Next time someone asks when the next get-together is, tell them, nope, it's someone else's turn, without guilt. I had to do this with my mother's group when I hosted 3 get-togethers in a year and no one else had hosted crap and the leader asked about the next one. If they want it to happen, they'll have to figure it out. Not the idiot. It is outrageous your family expects you to open your home to them for every occasion and not contribute anything. I have a large extended family and every party is a potluck. I guess I always assumed that's how people host house parties. The host usually prepared the main dish, turkey for Thanksgiving, ham for Christmas, etc., and every guest brings something to the house. You're the host and you're spending a lot of time preparing and cleaning up. Your guests bringing sides, soda, beer, etc. is just courtesy in my eyes. It reads as if you're going to foot the entry fee for the pool, but you're crazy if you do. You said in advance it was gonna be with your kids and so, and then they basically imposed. You'd be crazy to pay their fee, especially considering your financial situation. As far as food goes, they clearly don't understand your financial situation, or they're entitled idiots. Either way, you have to put your foot down. It's not your job to always host parties, nor is it your job to pay for all the food for someone else's. It is quite troubling that my son has been home for almost a month now, and I can count on one hand the number of times that I have been allowed to hold him, and a lot of that was in the hospital. It is very strange. She seems normal other than this, but I can't take it anymore because she's denying me opportunities to bond with my baby and acting like it's hers. So, I sat down with her and tried to articulate this, and I was surprised when she admitted she was doing it consciously. When I pressed her for her reasoning, she says that I'm not to be trusted because I drop things, which is BS. I asked her when was the last time I dropped anything, and she mentioned a couple days before she gave birth. I dropped a glass and broke it by accident, which I 100% admit to, but it's not as if I have a habit of doing this. Everyone makes mistakes once in a while. I asked if she could name any other time I dropped stuff, and she stuttered and tried to make up something, and I kinda rolled my eyes and said that she can trust me with him. She just shrugged her shoulders and didn't say anything, and I thought we moved on. Not gonna lie, I spent the entire night after that conversation awake, just waiting for him to cry, so I would get to hold him. Around 6 a.m. today he started wailing, so I jumped up from bed and got to him first and started to rock him back and forth. She was a few minutes behind me and said that he needed feeding. I said okay, give me the bottle, and I got it. She said no, give him to me. I said why, and she said, because it's better if I do it. I refused and stood my ground, and with baby in tow I went to the fridge to get out the bottle, and she basically started screeching in my ear, and I ignored her and fed the baby. For my first time it didn't go too badly, it's just like the YouTube videos. But after I dropped him off back in the crib, she spent all day in his room, only coming out to shower and make some food, and she's refused to speak to me except to tell me that she can't trust me with a baby anymore, which I think is A, unfounded, and B, an overreaction. I don't think I was in the wrong for wanting to spend some time with my own child. Your wife has postpartum depression or anxiety, my dude. You're not the idiot for wanting to hold and bond with your kid, obviously, but it's also not going to help your wife's anxiety. Her brain is telling her it's an absolute fact that you're going to drop the kid. It doesn't matter that you're not, that's her reality right now. She needs to speak with her doctor about care and treatment, and probably a therapist. No idiots here. I'm not a parent or doctor, but I feel like that's not 100% normal, man. Like, maybe she is experiencing some form of postpartum depression or anxiety. You can't call someone who's going through a mental episode an idiot, and obviously you aren't an idiot, but your description of her reaction and what she did afterward reads like someone who's describing a stranger in their house. I don't have any answers for why she's behaving this way, so maybe a mom who has been through this can weigh in. But I do know you should be able to hold your baby. This is so strange, I've never heard of this happening. I would recommend her seeing a therapist or something, but that's hard these days and your baby will only be little for so long. Does she have anxiety problems in general? There has to be more to this than her being afraid you'll drop him. My wife's niece, 19, moved in with us a few months ago after we discovered that her home life with her parents was borderline abusive. She is a difficult person to live with. Very rigid and awkward with poor social skills and some mental health concerns. In order to cope with a change in our household, I have entered into therapy and I use this time to process my thoughts, feelings, and yes, frustrations with having her with us. Usually I leave the house, my sessions are by telephone, to talk to my therapist, but today, I knew my niece was in her room, so I went out onto our coveted porch and closed the door. Well, about 30 minutes into my session, my wife started blowing up my phone asking why I was calling my niece names. I told her I hadn't spoken to my niece all day, and then realized that the only way she could know what I was saying, which wasn't name calling at all, was if someone was listening to my session. Turns out my niece had been eavesdropping on my conversation with my therapist and was really hurt by what she heard. She exaggerated some things and took others out of context, then ran to my wife sobbing. My wife is mad at me now and says it's my fault that niece is hurt. Wife says she doesn't want me discussing her or our niece or any other private family matters with my therapist, which is bad because that was the whole point of going to therapy for me. So, am I the idiot? Not the idiot. I think you need to talk to your niece and explain to her that even though you don't mind having her hear adults get frustrated, and therapy is a very private thing and is not meant to be listened into. And as for your wife, in therapy you're allowed to air everything and work through it. That's unfair for her to ask that of you, but from now on I would suggest don't have any more sessions over the telephone, or at least at home. Everyone's the idiot here. You only because you were someplace you could be overheard. A covered porch isn't exactly private, your niece for listening in. Your wife for trying to dictate what you can talk about during your sessions. Your niece is sensitive and fragile right now. She's confused, hurt and healing. What she didn't isn't okay, but she doesn't know proper boundaries and probably has very little trust in people. She should probably be in therapy as well. Perhaps she can do individual therapy and then the three of you can do a family session once a week. It's a lot for all of you to work through. Not the idiot. That's what therapy is for. Plus, your wife doesn't get to dictate the content of your personal conversations, whether with your therapist or anyone else. For her to suggest otherwise is very controlling and a serious red flag. A properly raised and well-socialized 19-year-old would know better than to eavesdrop on a personal conversation, but if your niece's home life was very troubled, maybe it's not so surprising she doesn't know better. Me and my wife have been in a loving marriage for 6 years and together for 10. We have an amazing 3-year-old girl together. I don't want to get too much into it, but I'm not long for this earth if you catch my drift. I have about 8 months before I shed this earthly form. Don't even start with the I'm so sorry stuff, that's cool and all, but I don't like being treated or looked at like I'm going to die. In fact, I don't even really like talking about it. We've already handled my affairs, my wife knows what I want, cremation and a new daddy for my daughter. My life insurance will take great care of them, and I've come to peace with my death. My wife on the other hand is understandably a mess. I don't blame her, but sometimes I think it's annoying. We've been spending as much time as possible together as a family, which I really enjoy, but it's incredibly difficult to enjoy my last months on this world when my wife becomes inconsolable. I do my best to comfort her, I really do, but it's hard to assure someone that everything will be fine after your own death. Honestly, it makes my time with her more depressing. I don't want her to have to think about it as much. I want her last months with me to feel like the best months of her life. When I'm gone, I want her to think about the great places we're going, the amazing love we're making, the fantastic foods I'm cooking for her, only the good things. She can't do that if every time I get close to her she starts crying. Last week, we were cuddling in bed, and I asked her to be Big Spoon. I turned around, and she got on my back. I could hear her smelling my hair. She then started quietly crying. I asked her what was wrong. She said she was going to miss the way I smelled. I sat up with her so she could cry on my shoulder. After she stopped, I brought up my displeasure. My exact words were, "I know you're hurting, and I want you to feel better and take care of you as much as possible. But right now, I need you to shut up about my death. It's not doing any of us any good to talk about or think about my death." She was shocked. She told me that she's never seen me be such an uncaring idiot. I apologized profusely and told her that I just want to stop talking about it and thinking about it. I talked to my sister and she said I'm the biggest idiot she's ever met. Would I be the idiot? No idiots here. I think this is a very hard thing for anyone to get through. You have come to terms with it, but your wife hasn't, and she may process her grief differently. She is losing the love of her life, and it's probably really hard for her. However, I can imagine hearing about your own death all the time is probably exhausting and depressing in the same way it is for your wife to think about it. I really don't think there are any idiots here. You were stating your feelings, and she is entitled to hers as well. I'm sorry, a lot of people seem to think no one's the idiot, but I have to say you are the idiot. At least a minor idiot. I have no advice. My husband of 40 years died 3 years ago, and I will never get over losing him. It was very sudden, but I would have had a hard time not crying before he died if I had years to get used to it. Do you want her to be fake? I am still screaming inside at the unfairness of him dying. We still had more plans. I can't imagine how hard it is for your wife. No idiots here. Death is the big thing, and you and your wife are entitled to your feelings about it. Sister calling you, her dying brother, the idiot for wanting to enjoy your last 8 months may be the idiot, but she's probably commenting about how you expressed it versus what you expressed. But you're dying, you're also entitled to be blunt. There's no resolution to this. You're going to want to enjoy your last 8 months, and your wife is going to be focusing on her loss. It's terrible.